Welcome back to the Dope Stroke podcast. What is up, boys? Looking beautiful as ever, looking organised as ever. Fantastic. How are we?
I am tremendous. It was my wife's 40th birthday party on Saturday. So if I do sound a little jaded, it's because I technically am. Few beverages of choice. My wife was on the table dancing the night away. The bar staff told us to get her off the table. And I was like, no, leave her on there. She's having a great time. Leave her there while everyone's going mental. So I had a good weekend and I'm ready for today's show.
Your wife was back in the place where you met her then?
On the table.
Table dancing.
Well, just missing a pole. Bubsy,
what's been happening, mate? You must have been celebrating the Dodgers win last week in the World Series. Big baseball guy.
I'm going to learn all about it in a minute when you start talking about it. I know that the Dodgers won because it's in the chat on the right, but other than that, I had no idea. I am currently in Sicily.
Nice.
Come to Italy for a few days. This place is amazing. I checked in and the lady says, I've got you a standard room. I said, yeah, that's absolutely fine. And then she said, hang on, are you not from the Dope Stroke Show podcast? I said, I am. I said, yeah. And then she's put me in this amazing, I've got to show you all for people who watch on YouTube, this amazing, like, massive room with a big 4-poster bed.
Nice.
So I'm living life.
Oh, mate.
Look at that. Hey?
Yeah.
Are there any
yeah.
table dancers in there?
not at the moment, they've just left.
And we've got to take a moment. Liverpool top of the league, McD.
Yes, damn right. Super delighted with that, especially with the other teams all dropping their points and Liverpool getting the business done. So, yeah, as a Liverpool fan myself, very, very happy to see those boys top of the table. Hopefully they can stay there for the season.
So to give you a little bit of a rundown of this Dodgers versus Yankees thing, look, I am as basic on baseball as they come, but I think it's a very important subject that we cover here in the United States of America. World Series, which I know what you're going to say, it's not the world. I get it. It's not the world either, but you can't say that in America. It has to be the world. And basically, the Yankees and the Dodgers, you've got the two coasts, like the biggest teams. Now, there are some other massive ones, but two biggest teams play each other in this final. I think it's best of 7. And the old Dodgers got it done, didn't they? But they got it done, I believe, in New York, which, again, is massive because it's best of that for the final series. So it was huge. It was big. And obviously Halloween, it went over that. Halloween's huge in the States. And then to get that done for the Dodgers was colossal. But I couldn't tell you one player. I did kept getting sent pictures of the Dodgers
Chelsea, since moving out there,
coach.
Which sport have you taken to the most? Which you find yourself watching, like baseball or NBA or what?
I don't watch any baseball, but I have been sent a bunch of pictures of the Dodgers pitching coach. Apparently, he looks like me, which he does look a bit like me, probably taller, I would imagine, in person. NBA is easy to follow. I actually loosely watched that before. And then you get March Madness, which is the college stuff, which the US boys go mad for their college stuff. I mean, you just got to pick, you got to pick an animal, like an owl or a badger or something, and basically go with it because every college is an animal pretty much. So, or a tree or a sun, pick something and go with it. And then, the American football though, when you get into it, is probably, that's the most intense one. That's the one that they like the most. And having met a couple of the quarterbacks who are great lads, that's the one that I kind of wish I watched a bit more of because it's pretty good. I mean, it's fun. And once you get the basics of what's going on, like probably the level where I'm at with baseball, then you realize this is a good sport, this. But I don't know a ton about it, but it's good to watch.
Well, the only thing I know about baseball really is that whenever they have a little turn to bat, it's called an innings, right? So it's the same thing as cricket, but that's about as deep as my knowledge goes, and that's it really. But I don't understand why baseball is so popular if it takes hours and hours to play like cricket. And cricket in my world, although, from South Africa, cricket's massive, it's still dull as dishwater. I mean, Jesus, cricket. Baseball, slow moving, too boring for me. Although I do like the idea, and I know American football is slow, but I really like the tactics involved in that. So for me, I quite like that as a sport in America.
The challenge that they have is they're trying to get adverts into the American football. So when you're watching it live, which I've never actually done, I've had a few offers, never taken them up on it. I think it goes through quite a while. But the stadiums in the States are way different to the Premier League. You've got restaurants in the stadiums. You've got bars. You've got all these little convenience places you can go that are just different level. But when it comes to watching the baseball, again, it's more of a people's game, and it's more of a enjoy your day out, and the baseball's kind of secondary. I've got some legendary stories about going to a football soccer game over here, and about how I basically caused a problem because I dived out the way of a woman that was watching the game. And in England, if you'd have done that and stepped in the way of someone at Anfield, my son wanted to go, or daughter, one of them wanted to go to the bathroom. So I'm trying to like help halfway through the half, and one of the players break, and basically I'm in the way of this woman's view. The story goes on, which I'm going to stop at this point because it didn't get it was a bad ending. But basically I thought I was in the way of this woman's view, and I nearly fell down this steep stadium. She wasn't bothered about it, but I thought she was really bothered about it, because in England you just get abused for that. But no, look, I mean, these are the baseball is the people's game, but it's more of a day out. A lot of females, a lot of males, like different people, a lot of kids. It's just different. Whereas when you go to a game in the UK, you are sitting down with your pie and your chips and your Cadbury's chocolate bar and your cocoa or your coffee, and you're watching that thing, and it's die hard. Very, very different.
Mm. Yeah, although I do quite like in American football, you have those garage. What do they call them? You know, where they got all their barbecues and stuff going to the back of their trucks and stuff like that in the car park. What's that called?
The car park.
Yeah. They do all tailgating before.
Tailgating,
again,
that's it.
It's a culture that I haven't really got myself into that much, but I mean, everyone does it. Everyone does it. And like I say, it's an event. It's a family piece of entertainment. It's just different. But once you start to embrace it, it's good. And to be fair, just on this, and we'll move on because we know nothing about these sports, so we must look like complete amateurs to our US followers. Baseball's added a pitching count, by the way. So you know how basketball has the shot clock. Baseball's done the same thing. And the purists were sat there who want to be sat there like forever and a day. You can't do this, you can't do this. But now they've actually got a clock that counts down how long it is to take your pitch. So the game's moved on a lot quicker. So every game, much like our previous podcast, which I know did very well and caused a lot of trivial messages coming in and a lot of interest. But, you know, the games are modifying a bit, which brings me back, and I think I got slated for it. Baseball still using wooden bats, and I'm sure that you lads basically said I was an arsehole for saying that baseball was using wooden bats. But that's fine. I can deal with that. We can move on to worlds that we know a little bit more. And, well, I know Daryl knows a bit more.
Do I?
Yeah, definitely, because you've been involved in this. I'm going to pick how I do this now. I'll go Saudi Arabian golf rather than saying Charley Hull, because then if I go, you've been involved in this, people go, Charley Hull, he's been involved with Charley Hull, and they'll think she's a table dancer. No. Charley Hull, just to kick that off and put it straight, is an absolute legend and a proper gamer. I want to start there, all right? And I like Charley Hull. Now, Charley just won in Saudi on the ladies' tour after 8 second-place finishes. But my biggest take on all this is, obviously, Charley's polarizing. She will laugh at a lot of things. She gets a lot of jokes. She's good banter. Hell of a golfer. I want to cover how hard she hits it, like 155 ball speed, which we'll talk about that, and we'll get on that subject. But Saudi Arabian female golf and winning it there, I mean, that's a bit of a take, right, in itself. I've not been to Saudi, Daryl. I know you have. Bubsy, you been to Saudi?
Nope, not been there.
Well, I think, I suppose, what do you want to know? What can I tell you about that moment?
I want to know. I want to kick it off with the Middle East and Saudi Arabia and ladies golf. I mean, isn't this all? And then the most polarizing figure in ladies golf wins in Saudi Arabia, in a country that really isn't embracing of female sports.
No, but I do think when you look at whether people agree or disagree with what the Crown Prince is doing in Saudi, he is working on, or he's got his teams and thousands of people working on these very specific projects. One of those projects is known as Vision 2030, which is really about modernizing Saudi Arabian society, because one of the big things that they have in the country is they have a very, very young population. I can't remember exactly what the average age of a local would be, but it's in the 30s. So it's very young. So as society is changing, the idea of Vision 2030 is to really modernize the country by bringing in music festivals, golf tournaments, boxing. We've seen some of the projects that's been announced called NEOM and the Line as well, that 174 kilometer sort of premises, should we call it? They've got massive, massive plans. So when they're looking at women's golf, that is really a part of that Vision 2030. And things that aren't really that well publicized outside of the region, and I'm including the whole of the Middle East here, is that, and I get it, by the way, women weren't allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia just a handful of years ago. I get it. I get it. I understand that point. It's horrific, but hey, look, that's their rule at that time, which they've now since changed. But it's also now compulsory for children in school, boys and girls, to participate in sport. So actually, if you start to think about a societal change, you could argue that they're making some steps. Might not be all the way to what we would be used to in our Western cultures, but part of that is down to that. So when you get Charley Hull winning a tournament in the region, like that's actually kind of a coup, really, for Saudi Arabia. It puts a spotlight on the region in what would be a positive light. That's how I would view that moment, knowing full well that they've got challenges within, as every country has challenges. Theirs are just very different kind of challenges that they would be dealing with compared to Western governments. So overall, I find it quite hard to argue negatively against that, other than the fact, and I know a friend of mine, he's a broadcaster, he mentioned a few things to me last week. One of them being that a lot of this is funded by the government. So PIF is government owned. It's a government, it's a private investment fund of Saudi Arabia. It's the country's money. It's not a private investor. So the source of that money has a big topical debate. But you look at Aramco Team Series. Aramco stands for Arabian American Company. So it's one of the world's wealthiest companies, turning over billions and billions and billions of dollars. And with what they've done in the ladies' game, all of that was a precursor for Live Golf. So they were using the Aramco Team Series to learn how to do it, to make mistakes, to figure out what works well for fan bases. And lo and behold, Live Golf comes to the fore, and the rest is sort of history to a degree. But yeah, that's my sort of take on that. And the fact that it's Charley Hull that won it, I think that adds kudos to the narrative that Saudi Arabia are pushing for.
Best player that could have won that for sure, right? Absolutely. She is awesome for golf, I think.
I think so. Well, she's modern, she's fresh, she's got that sort of the right level of attitude in the public eye. I know she can be a bit polarizing at times, but you know what? That's what makes the whole ladies game attractive. I think it's great.
You need in any sport, you need great players and you need great personalities. And if someone can tick both, they're huge for the game. And she is great. She's a great player. She's a phenomenal golfer, absolute baller. And she gets talked about. She's a great personality. She's got a different take on many things, and people like her for that reason. She's great for golf.
She's a little bit old school in her approach, and she takes an old school and like the banter she's got and the way she is on camera, and she's very sort of like Northern English, Midlands, and stuck to that route and just answers everything direct, and it is what she thinks. And if you don't like it, well, it's fine. It's fine not to like it. It is what it is, I
think that's good, right? Because to be an elite level performer, you're going to face criticism. I mean, hell, we've had criticism on this Dope Stroke podcast show already. You just got to deal with it, right?
In this day and age, though, mate, it's very hard. I have to watch it all the time. I mean, we joke about it. If we could record the intros, people that work with me often are like, "Oh, if we do and say that if we leave the cameras on all the time." You've got to be so conscious. I mean, I'm pushing the boundaries now more than I ever have in my, professional career. And I'm still miles away from the person I truly am when it comes to putting a microphone and a camera on. It's just hard.
Yeah. I don't know. You're not that far away. Pretty chopsy at the best of times.
The only thing with Charley,
I'm miles away.
We got to talk about it because she gets a lot of publicity for this. And you know what I'm going to say, don't you? Yeah. She smokes. And she gets a lot of publicity for that. And that's the only thing I think you could look at her and go, and it's not her fault. She's not asking the cameraman to come over and take a photo, but it gets a lot of airtime. And that's the only thing when you think of juniors and young girls getting into the game of golf, she pretty much ticks everything you want a role model to be, maybe apart from that.
Smoking is an old school thing now, I never smoked, but it's old school, right? I thought it was pretty cool, but
Yeah,
you look
really.
back on the pictures of Hogan smoke, Senna didn't smoke, but motor racing, James Hunt, smoker. You go back through the iconic pictures, and the cigarette is present. It's interesting. I maybe she's got, like I said earlier, I think she's old school. So if that element is in there, I've been around her a lot, and I've never seen her smoke. I've seen her vape, but I've never seen her smoke. So
I think
I'm not saying she shouldn't. That's her choice. I think she can do whatever she wants. I'm just saying it from the outside looking in. She doesn't call that attention on herself for it, but it happens.
She gets a little anxious, doesn't she? I think that anxiety, that helps a bit with that.
She has said that in tournaments. She feels anxious, which anyone would, and you know what? It's good for someone at that level to talk about that. Talk about she gets anxious and maybe a little nervous, and certain situations don't sit that well with her. I think that's good for anyone to hear, really, young golfers especially, to hear that people at that level maybe go through some of the same issues that the regular golfer goes through. That's good.
I wonder, though, if it's really that damaging, if at all, for the Charley Hull brand. Yes, I know it might not look great optically for the children watching someone smoke while signing their autographs. I get it. But actually, I wonder, you think about some of those iconic photos you mentioned, Trottie, in 20, 30 years' time, are we going to see a picture of Charley Hull walking the fairway with a fag in her hand? And that might look pretty cool, to be fair, at that time. Now, I'm not an advocate of smoking at all, but I also think that these kids that are going to come through the ranks to become a player themselves, the reality is, and the chances are, they're probably not going to start smoking, thinking it's going to be better for their game. So I'm not so sure if it's that damaging for a brand, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things there as well. I mean, in order for that picture to become iconic, either something needs to happen with the Saudi Arabian event where that becomes a milestone event, or she does have to win a major, or 2 majors in the ladies' game to get the credit she deserves. I mean, like I said, 8 runner-ups to get to this point. She's on a mission. It's interesting to see. So, Bubsy, question for you then, mate. If she came to you for coaching and she was basically saying to you, would you address the smoking for the anxiety? And if not, or if people don't smoke, how do you help them if they've got anxiety on a golf course?
If I started coaching her, I'd probably start smoking as well, to be fair. I think when you look at golfers at that level, male or female, that are competing at the level that she's competing and obviously trying to go and win the biggest tournaments that she can win, you've got to get a support team around you, someone who is the specialist in the fitness and the mental side of it. So the kind of fitness side of things, that would be something that I would pass on to someone else. They might have that conversation with her, but it wouldn't be something that I would get involved with. If she came to me for coaching, I would be looking at performance and that side of things only, and then trying to put a decent team around her that she trusts and listens to. And if that person felt like that was a conversation that needed to be had, then they'd have it with her, but it wouldn't be something I would do.
And then would that be the same even with the anxiety? You'd pass off to a sports psychologist, or would you help try and deal with that?
I mean, I would say, you listen to people like Butch, right? Great coach, even someone like Claude Harmon, and the number of stories they've told about players they've worked with in final rounds of big events. They're on the range doing some quote unquote work with them before they go and play, and they win the tournament. And they speak after and they say, look, I didn't tell him anything or tell her anything with the golf swing. It was about me putting them in the right frame of mind. So I think if she had anxiety issues, I would be addressing that, but not in a way where it'd be like, hey, let's sit down in a chair and talk about it. It would just be like doing the things that I know would put her at ease or try to build confidence. And that would be, that would be a relationship that develops over years and years and years. And the more you work with a player, you'd know what kind of switches to hit and what things to say. So it would definitely be something that I would be aware of and I would be conscious of trying to help with, but not in a kind of formal capacity like that, if that made any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, I've been working with a sports psychologist again.
Have you? Is that because you told us that you leaked it right in the water?
Yeah.
So if someone, an old friend of mine, Winning Golf Mind, Lee Crumbleholm, works on the European tour, got in touch with me, or I got in touch with him. I can't remember. We started exchanging messages. And before you know it, I'm asking him questions. Before you know it, we're on the range with an iPhone, basically having a psychology session again about how to hit this freaking golf ball better. And I was like, I guess we're doing this, which it was needed.
Why do I get the feeling that you'd be the kind of person who'd be messaging him like 8 times a day, non-stop? Like, you wouldn't leave him alone, would you? You'd be like, I'm on the 12th, the 14th hole's coming up, there's water left, what we're going to do?
I'm not as bad with Lee as I am with the fella that helps me with my coaching, Ramo Golf. Like, he gets hammered. He gets a lot of texts, especially if I'm not playing well.
Are these guys, and I bet you've done this deal that they get a percentage of your on-course earnings. Is that how they get paid?
Well,
they're both homeless at the moment.
Fuck all.
On that note, you know, I played last Friday, and I think I've told Daryl this. I joined a golf club out here about 2 months ago because I've not been playing enough golf, and I love golf, and I'm like, I need to just get sharper. So I go, and I played like 3 Friday games. Shit, all of them like crap. Two 75s, which one of the 75s could have been 65, just rubbish. And then the other one was like an 80, and I'm like, this is garbage. Get out there, go and do the usual kids run at the weekend. Anyway, you know, the game comes up, and it's called like this. They've got this Halloween tournament with the pins in tricky spots and all that. So it's a scramble shamble type format. The fella stands on the first tee, and his name is, I won't say his name, but he's an old boy, big lad, played in the MLB, right? Played for the Phillies, which is Philadelphia baseball team. And he canes this golf shot down. We start on the 3rd, tough hole. Canes this golf shot, little tight draw up the left side. And I'm like, fair dues. I'm hitting a cut at the moment. So I hit this ball out there pretty good, 5 yards behind this fella. I was like, this is going to be a long day. This is going to be tough. Thankfully, he didn't keep it up, and I did keep it up. And we took like a lot of my drives, majority of my drives. But obviously I leave and I get onto the psychologist afterwards. And I'm just like, how can in a shamble scramble, I just be Mr. Freewheel off the tee? I mean, I drove it lights out, 101 on clipped data, which is shot quality, which is freaking awesome. I mean, it's plus a lot of strokes gained for what people would understand. But it's just like that mentality of being free, which I guess is why I was asking you those questions, Bubsy. Like, why are we free in scramble golf? Why do we just let it roll? Why are we not reaching for the anxiety pack of cigarettes in scramble golf? And we're just getting it done. I mean, my whole game was the best it's been probably in the last year and a half. So give me some wisdom. I've got you here. Help me. I'll give you some of my course earnings.
You know, I did this conference, right? And I'm not going to give you the answer to your question here, but I remember this conference, and there was a demonstration, and it was brilliant, and it really kind of opened my eyes to kind of what we all go through. So there was this conference, right, and there's a bin like down the floor. This guy gets this bin, moves
Trash
everyone
can
away
for the Americans.
Bin.
This is an American episode this week. Trash can.
Trash can. And he puts the bin in the floor, and he gets a volunteer out, and he gives them a Coca-Cola bottle, like a plastic Coca-Cola bottle that's empty. And he says, right, stand 5 paces away from that bin. He said, I want you to throw that in the bin. So the guy stands there and he throws this Coca-Cola bottle. It misses the bin, goes to the floor. He goes, oh, no worries, have another go. Throws it again, misses the bin, gives it back again. 3rd time, throws it in the bin. He's, oh, brilliant. Awesome. He then goes to his bag and he gets out an empty Coca-Cola bottle, but it's a glass one. And he goes, right, now go on, throw that in the bin. And the guy stands there and he's like, what, throw this in the bin? And he's like, yeah, throw it in the bin. And he's like, but if I miss, it's gonna smash on the floor. And his whole point was, his whole mindset changed because he knew potentially the outcome was going to be different with a failure. With a plastic bottle, he wasn't bothered. It wasn't even entered his head. He was just throwing it freely and got it in. But as soon as there was like, if I don't do it correctly, if I fail, this horrendous thing's going to happen. And he was basically saying, that's golf. You go and play, scramble, you're throwing a plastic bottle at a bin. As soon as it's your own ball, it's glass, you're thinking of the outcome, what happens if this, what happens if that? And he was saying that is the biggest thing in sport, not just golf, in sport. How do you perform like it's a plastic bottle when it's actually a glass bottle? We've got to get that answer. I haven't got that answer. It's just a good story.
So it's funny, and it's a cracking segue. One of the things that Winning Golf Mind that I leave with is a toward mindset. So basically, rather than standing there and thinking I'm going to miss with the glass bottle that's going to shatter, I'm gonna smack the middle of this trash can. And that's one of the main things. So obviously having partners in a scramble and my man who's 63 whipping it out there at 280 and me having to cannon one after him, it's like once you got one golf ball out there, the world's your oyster, really. But I think you look at guys like Freddie Couples and they play like that their whole career. John Daly plays like that his whole career. And that's where you have to get to. There's another story, isn't there, of Michael Owen, the striker for Liverpool back in the day, went to Real Madrid. And basically he talks about being in his living room with his mum and dad. And they had that old school wallpaper and they had a trash can bin against the wall. And he'd finish like a piece of fruit or an apple core. And his dad would say, oh, chuck it in the bin. And his mother would be like, if you miss, Michael, and hit that wallpaper, I'm going to kill you. And he'd stand there and just go,
loop it in.
Get it in every time. But that just shows you that the fear of it's a toward mindset. It's having a mindset that you're going to achieve this.
What's interesting, this is only my experience. This was some advice someone gave me years ago, and I found it massively helpful for my game, is, I hate the advice of ignore the out of bounds, ignore the water, ignore this, ignore that. I hate that. And I found that I wasn't performing great or as well as I would like to when there was trouble around. So I actually started going through almost the opposite and almost like massively making myself aware of all that trouble and standing on a hole again. Right, there is out of bounds on the right. There is water on the left. I definitely don't want to go out of bounds. I definitely don't want to go in the water. So what is my best option? Well, my best option is I stand up here and I make a great golf swing right at that middle of the fairway. And then I focus on what I'm trying to do. But for me, it was almost like I felt like the danger or the hazards were going to pop into my head at some point. So I was like, I'm just going to acknowledge it right now. I'm just going to acknowledge it that it's there. Like, why would you tell someone to ignore the out of bounds on the right? That out of bounds on the right is going to dictate the shot type you hit, the club that you hit, your target. Let's go to targets again. You've got to acknowledge all the trouble, but then you've got to focus on what you actually want to do. Exactly what you say, Trottie, towardness.
Yeah, you've ended up there. I mean, you've gone through a pack of Marlboros with your anxiety to get there, but you've ended up in the right place. I mean, it's funny though, because, you get in this situation and I went for a golf lesson. I've basically been on a pilgrimage to get my golf game a little bit back to where it needs to be. And rather than going straight into the deep technical stuff, I've always used one guy in the UK who's been brilliant, Mark Ramsdale, old friend of mine. But I also went to Martin Chuck out in Phoenix, who's quite famous. He made a ton of great training aids, and he was so gracious to have me over. And I was trying to recapture a bit of like that older figure, and he's not that old, but older figure golf coach from when I was a kid. And one of the things he said in the lesson was, no matter what happens, he's like, have you got a dog? And I said, yeah, I've got a dog. He said, no matter what happens to this golf ball, your dog is still going to run towards you when you walk through the door. Like, it's not the end of the earth. You have to accept that. But it's like I got to a stage because I'd had a level of play before and then had a huge break. I was just casually standing there on a hole that might have, trouble down the left. You've got to hit a peeler or whatever you got to do. And just thinking, yeah, I can do it with no visualization, no focus, and no really toward mindset. And before you know it, that would compound to me needing to reach in the bag for the pack of Marlboros as well, because I couldn't see light for the flipping down the end of the tunnel. You know what I mean? And then when you get to that point, it's a long way back. It's hard to come back.
It's like,
I think when you go on,
it's slightly off topic, but going back to like right at the Belfry days when we started, I remember you, Trottie, and I remember there was a few of us talking about this. When you started at the Belfry, you were an absolute baller. Like, you were a proper player, probably one of the better ones that joined. And you had a great golf swing, but I remember you were just like a field player, natural player. And then over the 3 or 4 years at the Belfry with the PGA headquarters, with the coaches and all the team, you were like getting super technical. And I remember you might be saying to yourself, like, this is not where I need to go. Like, I'm getting away from what made me a great player. And it's not quite the same topic, but it's the same thing. You've got to get back to what your recipe is, what works for you, what makes you tick, what makes you work.
So I think that's hurt me my whole life, for sure. This desire to learn more has resulted in me being on the Dope Stroke podcast, which is fine.
Not on the
I
tour.
mean, if that's No, exactly. But it's resulted in me having a lot of information and then having to filter that information to others in order to help them. And I think that even now, like I've honestly had 2 years in the shed with my golf game, and it's been an obsession with getting the club halfway down at P6 in a different position. And as soon as I've embraced where that club is, then I can hit one shot that starts in one window and moves one direction. And guess what? If you can hit one shot that starts in one window and moves one direction, you can play really great golf. And I could name you 35 tour players without even thinking about it who do that, who are proficient at a fade or proficient at a draw and do not hit the other way. And I've finally got back there. And I think at freaking 43, I've started to embrace that, which then gets me to the point where when you are playing, like, you know when it's coming back, because I start to get my speed back. Like I hit some tee shots over the last few days that just the speed's back because it's not the guidey shite and it's the proper hit. And it brings me back a little bit before we totally move on from her. But Charley Hull is hitting like 155 ball speed. That's a hefty amount of club speed. And just as a fitter, I always relate to ball speed. But I think in the coaching world, Bubs, I've heard you allude to it a bit more. Like club speed tends to be the barometer for you a little bit more than ball speed, right?
I mean, I would use both. Obviously, we both use full swing kits. You get the data. I would say that 90% of the golfers who come to see me who've got numbers in their mind will have club speed, not ball speed. They won't know their ball speed, but they might have a rough idea what their club speed is. So I'm going to be pretty much tailoring my language as much as I can to suit the individual I've got. And most of the time it's club speed. But I think having that conversation of the relationship between the two and, smash factor and linking that back and what influences that is massively important because, there's going to be plenty of people out there with 110 club speed who aren't getting anywhere near 155 ball speed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy the amount of fitters that I talk to and they still live off of club speed. I'm like, it's irrelevant. It's all ball speed. It's how efficient you're making that golf club. It's an interesting one. And just to see Charley maxing out like that and the distances she's hitting it shows that she's dialed with her equipment, which at tour level golf, much as we're stood here talking about psychology, we're stood here talking about equipment. It's all part of it. Schedule picking, what you do with your brand and your sponsors. It's all part of how you become a great player. But it brings us, and I think you nicely mentioned it, and it's another topic I want to cover, and I know Daryl is big on this, is new forms of golf, learning to hit these shots. Behind me is a full swing sim. Hitting a shot, let's pick 18 TPC Sawgrass. Everyone knows it. Water down the left, trees down the right. You don't want to miss it down the right because you're going to make the hole a lot tougher for you on stroke gain. Obviously, you can't hit it left. That tee shot mentally is a tough tee shot. But sometimes in a sim, you're able just to do the Martin Chuck thing, let it go, throw the Coke can or Coke bottle at the bin or trash can, depending on where your IP address is connected to. But the bottom line is, Dazzler, like this whole new simulator world, this new forms of golf, traditionalists maybe like myself and Bubsy here, tough for us. I mean, I'm embracing it, but it's not. I still love an old school game of golf. You know what I mean? Where do you think it's all going?
Well, I don't think there's any problem being a traditionalist in the golf sense. I don't think that's an issue. That's not really having a major effect. I just think that new forms of the game to appeal to different audience groups is where it's going. So if we look at the financial data of how golf is made up, 80% of the income that comes into the industry is from what is known as the non-traditional golfer. So it's coming from places like Top Golf. It's coming from the simulator market. It's coming from Crazy Golf. It's coming from all these different types and forms of the game that's sort of popping up here, there, and everywhere. Like Pop Stroke in the States looks amazing. The RNA this week has put out some commentary about how to do the most in terms of fan engagement for golf in smaller spaces. This is just the direction of travel now. And you have to appreciate that you can be a traditional golfer or a non-traditional golfer. It doesn't mean that you have to choose side. It's not like Live and PGA where everyone's trying to get you to choose a side. You can like it all. You don't have to. You can enjoy the game for what it is in the way that you like to enjoy it. That's how I look at it. But no matter how you perceive it, the bigger part of the business model is with the non-traditional golfer. So commercially, if you've got an idea in a small space that you think you can bring to life, hell, aim pitch it for the non-traditional golfer and you got half a chance of making some money.
You think they'll stick in the game, though? The hard part is the game's tough. I guess the thing is with that tee shot 18 at Sawgrass, it's the emotion of playing 17 holes and being on that shot. Whereas if you're hitting balls into this, it's more of a swing than the emotion of the shot, you know?
Yeah, but does it really matter if they're staying in the game in the way that you might initially be thinking about it? You know, staying in the game for somebody might be playing simulator golf once a year, but they do it every year. It could be someone that takes their kids for their birthday for the next 7 years to a crazy golf. Like that's them still staying within the game. It doesn't have to be twice a week on an 18-hole golf course, having a whiskey and a cigar in the clubhouse at the Berkshire. It's not like that.
Cigarettes for Bubsy.
Yeah, exactly. I've sat in conversations and been part of conversations where, you know, people talk about Top Golf and simulators, and I've heard people say, yeah, that's great because that gives them a start into golf, but how do we then get them to become members of golf courses? And I'm like, why do they need to become members of golf courses? Like, why is that the end? Like, you're so close-minded, and to think that that's a golfer is someone who becomes a member of a club. Like, why? Like, you know, in 10, 15, 20 years' time, there will be golfers who are quote-unquote golfers who've never been on a golf course. That's fine. There will be people who've only played par 3 courses. That's fine. There's people who are playing golf in their back garden, in a simulator room. That's fine. We have to appreciate that technology is moving so fast. And, you know, World Long Drive is golf in my eyes. You know, Pop Stroke is golf. It's all under the umbrella of golf. We don't need to get people and force them down this funnel of get into a golf club and become a member, because it doesn't fit for so many people. Like, I could not be a member of a golf club now because of family, work commitments. So I have to look at other ways to play golf. It doesn't mean I'm not a golfer.
Yeah. And I think, like, I'm going to give you a bit more of a tangible context as well from the traditional golf space. But we were working with a golf club once, as in my company, Rocket Yard. We're doing some stuff for them. And as we're having this meeting, it's all about paid ad strategies and stuff like that. And the chairman of the club says, yeah, what we really want to do is we want to attract golfers from other clubs to come and become a member of our club. And I said, why the hell would you do that? Like, how's it helping you develop the industry of golf as a whole if you're trying to just take golfers from somewhere else? That's not the answer. And I said to him, look, the answer is you've got to establish all forms of golf or different forms of golf within your club. So why don't you put in a soft play, which is all golf themed? So people of like me at my age with children can come on site. My kids can go and in the soft play. I can go out, maybe play 9 holes or hit some balls on the range. As a family, we can go into the clubhouse, have a coffee afterwards, and the kids can have like a golf themed ice cream or something like that. But you're exposing them to the game. So even if they don't end up becoming that traditional golfer, you're growing golfers because the environment makes that happen. And growing a golfer isn't all about the traditional space, but I think the golf clubs should be taking a much bigger or playing a much bigger role in developing golfers than they actually are, because taking them from other golf clubs in terms of the members is not the freaking answer. That's just you can't make more.
But mate, we're in a world now where and this is again the reason I think we start the podcast and the reason we're on these topics, and it's fantastic, albeit I do feel we have to tread with some caution. Everyone involved in all these things, they're all trying to make money. And all these golf courses are owned by a governing body, and they don't want to put money, or a bigger business, they don't want to put money in. They just want to get the money out. And the easiest thing to do that is to take members from somewhere else. And
yeah,
I'm seeing it every day out here, mate.
If you look at, hang on, I want to rewind the clock on that. So Kodak had an opportunity to buy digital cameras. Never took it up. They never took it up. But it's the same thing.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with
you. You said that you're treading lightly. I'm like, no, don't tread lightly. Just say it exactly as it is. The golf clubs are their own worst enemy here. And I'm not saying all of them, because some of them are fantastic. But you have to be thinking about, 20 years in the future. You can't be thinking about, oh yeah, we're 20 members short right now, we need to do a paid ad strategy to attract members from somewhere else. That's not the freaking answer. Good friend of mine, Dr. Mark Bloomfield, shout out, smart guy, AI expert, professor at Cambridge University. Second time I've mentioned him on this show because he's a legend. And as I said before, he will give all of his clients a yogurt pot or a yogurt pot and get them to write the expiry date of their company on there. And he does that on the basis that they don't change. So the point is that if your business model isn't working, change it. And by changing it, you've got to start looking at the goal for 20 years in 20 years in the future. So if that means getting my 2-3-year-old kid on site into a soft play to build him into a golfer one day, that's the right approach. You're thinking about the bigger picture always.
I totally agree. But the problem is they're focusing on the now because they have this next year's budget they've got to break and then boundaries and blah, blah. I totally agree.
That's
but
why
if
they'll
you're
fail.
thinking, well, in
They
an
will.
affluent
They will
area,
fail.
in an affluent area like Carlsbad, California, there's a lot of them queuing up to be a member. So I think
it's different though. That's a different type of golf though, isn't it? That's a premium golf club membership of like $100,000 plus a year. That's a different type of consumer base. So those ones are all geared to the higher level business person who's looking for that escape in that world. I'm talking about the future of the game, the masses, and where those golf clubs and those golfers are coming from. So when everyone starts spitting feathers about, yeah, I'm a traditionalist and I want to see traditional golf, well, the only way you're going to really develop that is to create more touch points and exposure points with other forms of the game, knowing full well that those people might not become traditionalists, but you might capture a small corner of that market.
So I'm going to lay this down to you now, and this is you and me having a business meeting. Bubsy, you get the minutes out right now because this one needs to be documented.
Do we have cigarettes on the table?
Can I choose a winner?
We do. Do what you want, but I need McDee's help on this. And this is it. This is official. I want to be in this space. I got a gift about 2 weeks ago. Technically not for me, technically for my kids. A good friend of mine bought me a gift. And it was one of those virtual reality headsets. And it came with Batman. Jesus. I mean, I absolutely have shit myself over that. I hate computer games, but I've been playing Batman, punching these ghouls and whatever, and it's like legit. I had to take it off because I had 2 cars to wash. I had my missus aching me balls. I had my son wanted to have a go. My daughter wanted to get on it. And I wanted to go and play golf. I'm like, I could have spent the last 4 days on this virtual reality thing. Virtual reality golf is the future. McD, can you get me into virtual reality fitting, please? I want to do it. Figure it out.
I reckon that's coming, mate. That is...
No, hey, we're ahead of the curve. I'm thinking of Trottie Golf customer in the next 10 years, 15 years. Get me into it, big guy. I want to be part of that virtual reality golf.
Oh, well, that's not that hard, is it? You just each of you need a headset. You hit some golf balls. You can stand there as if you're on the driving range watching them. Now you've got a really good tangible view. You get your full swing kit out just to make sure that you're getting the right data back to you. And you fit a golf club in the same way that you do now. That's the whole point about virtual reality, right? It's to make it not that dissimilar to what you're experiencing now.
I do need to work on how you pick things up and stuff, though, because it took me 20 minutes to open a door on Batman the other day. And all I had to do was grab this thing, and I kept missing it. And I was like, well, anyway, needed to take a step forward. So I got to work on that. But other than that, I mean, mate, it's the way forward. Virtual reality is legit.
So. Yeah, it's funny. This is a slight change of subject in terms of the circumstances, but I had the headset on in a virtual reality experience because we're looking to potentially get a new kitchen for the house, right? So you open up the drawers and you open up the cupboards and everything, and I decided I need to walk from one end of the kitchen to the other side. I just fucking head smashed straight into the wall with the headset on, and the kitchen guy comes over, puts his hand in my back, says, "Oh, excuse me, sir, are you all right?" I'm like, "No, I'm not fucking all right, actually. I've just walked into a wall, haven't I?"
You need that floor. Have you seen that floor that Microsoft have designed? Have you seen it? It's like a square, so it's, I don't know, like 10 feet by 10 feet, and it's got these like little rollers, and I can't explain how it works, but basically you stand on it and you use VR, and whichever way you turn, you walk, but you don't move. But you can just turn and walk in any direction. And it's like, I don't know how the hell they work, but you watch the video, so you can turn, walk, but you're still on the spot, and then you turn that way, walk. That is amazing.
How long was it until you started doing the moonwalk on that thing? How long was it?
I haven't used it. I can't even do it without the rollers, let alone with the rollers.
I mean, you've got to think the moonwalk would be easier on the rollers, for sure.
It's got to be, yeah.
What you need to do, you need golf shoes, take the spikes out, and then just imagine you're on the dance floor. We've all done it.
Yeah, exactly. We've all done that one, haven't we, McD? Anyway, I hear that we've had someone write in on the questions We've had a couple of comments coming in. South Africa, I believe, McD, did
Yeah,
you tell
we've
me?
actually had quite a few things come through. A lot of good feedback from what we're doing on the show. The odd bit of criticism, which is enjoyable to read. But
I want to know
from
the criticism.
From our,
The criticism came in, and me and Dazzle spoke, and we said we've got to keep Trottie. So
yeah,
We
got
dismissed
no
Charley
choice.
Hull. Charley Hull will be
Yeah.
writing in next week.
Well, no, on the beer count scenario, we definitely had quite a cool one come through. So shout out to Brad in South Africa. He went and played Milnerton Golf Club, which is near Cape Town, and he was with his buddies on a golf trip. I think he didn't say how many there were, but there's a whole bunch of them went to the golf course, and then
do you have a soft play?
sunset, I imagine it must have been a tough play. It gets pretty windy down there.
No, did
But
they have a
anyway,
soft play?
Plays.
Oh, did they have a soft play? Well, I don't know where to go with that, but yeah, we'll say yes for the sake of it. Milnerton Golf Club, get a soft play.
Is this virtual
then-
reality, or did it actually
No,
happen?
let me finish the story. Poor Brad.
He was on these rollers.
He's waiting for the story. He's on the rollers, yeah. Anyway, Brad plays golf with his buddies. It's getting close to sunset. And in South Africa, the beer of choice in South Africa is a Castle Lager, which Trottie will attest to in the years that he's been traveling back and forth from there as well. And they took a bunch of beers with a cooler box down to the beach, and they had a beer on the beach while looking at the sunset over Table Mountain. And that was his beer story of the weekend. So I thought that was quite a nice one to say. So shout out
That
to
is a
Brad,
good one.
Castle Lager. And they actually have a little funny song about Castle Lager. Something to do, actually, it's Lion Lager. So, because the guy that invented Castle is a guy called Charles Glass. The other popular beer in South Africa is called a Lion. So, the theme tune goes something on the lines of Charles Glass can kiss my ass because I'm a lion drinker.
I don't. We done. End of podcast.
Yeah,
Everyone, that's it. Yeah. If you need to get in touch with us, what is the email address, Daryl? If you give us that, kiss my arse, Lion Lager. What is it?
hello@dopestroke.com. Make sure you send in your emails. We want to hear more about your beer stories for sure. Any feedback, any things you want us to talk about, make sure you send it through. Once again, it's hello@dopestroke.com. And yeah, check us out on social media and follow us on Apple and also on Spotify. And hopefully we'll see you next week.
Dope.
Brad, you're in the top 10, buddy. Well done with your Table Mountain
Comfortable.
Lion arse kissing lager. Peace.